Hello YouTube. The Skyrim Civil War, the conflict that has pitted the people of Skyrim against each other, brother against brother, sister against sister, player against player. Somehow, even this long after the game's release, the Skyrim Civil War still calls up emotions in players, as could be seen in the comment sections of my last two videos. But that gave me the wonderful idea to take a short view back into the past, to Skyrim's previous civil conflict, a conflict that split the province in two separate kingdoms for several generations. So, let's talk about Skyrim's previous civil war after the intro. So, Skyrim, province of cold, tundras and ancient traditions. Traditions in Skyrim are often so old that none really remember who started them, and sometimes even they trace back to the days in Atmora, the ancient home continent of the early Nords before recorded time. One of the most ancient traditions is that of the selection of Skyrim's next High King or Queen, the individual who will rule over all of the holds and unite the province, either strongly or loosely. Now, something important to note here is that the power that the High King or Queen has often varied. Some had a lot of power and were able to truly unite Skyrim, and some were only figureheads, while the Jarl, so the provincial rulers, had the most power, and others were simply figureheads, while the real power lay with another ruler, like in the periods where the Riemann, Septim and Mede Empire ruled over Skyrim, when the Emperor was the real power or the Elder Council. Why am I explaining this? Well, because Skyrim's previous split was also the result of the death of a High King and the result of the big autonomy that the internal regions, so the holds, have under their Jarls. Let me explain. During the 5th century of the Second Era, Skyrim was ruled over by a man named High King Logrolf. This was during the days when Skyrim was ruled over by the Riemann Empire, which was then ruled by the Akaviri potentate Severian Chorak. Now, Severian Chorak would be the final ruler of the Riemann Empire, as in the year 430 of the Second Era, he was assassinated along with all of his heirs, and the Riemann Empire that he had ruled over would start to fracture and fall apart, and along with this fracturing came political chaos and discontent. Less than a year after the assassination of the potentate and fracturing of the empire, in the year 431 of the Second Era, High King Logrolf of Skyrim was also assassinated. Why he was assassinated, we don't really know, but we know that he was loyal to the empire at a time when the empire still existed, and we know that when he was assassinated, the empire was busy falling apart. So if I had to take a guess, he was probably assassinated to make sure that Skyrim would leave the empire during the political chaos, or to further instabilize the empire, but that's just really speculation, though it would line up with the things that we know. Now, usually what would happen when a High King or Queen dies is a meeting of the Jarls of Skyrim, a so-called moot. A moot would take place and the moot would choose a successor to lead the province. It had become a bit of a tradition that the crown would usually fall to someone in the royal family, either an appointed heir or someone else in the family, and the moot would simply approve this appointment unless this person was really not fit to rule or had clashed with Skyrim's traditions. In this case, the daughter of High King Logrolf, Princess Freydis, his daughter and after his death the Jarl of Windhelm, had been his appointed heir, and she was brought before the Moot of Jarls to be confirmed as Logrolf's successor. However, at this Moot of Jarls, one of the Jarls, Jarl Svarter of Solitude, would start a conflict and claim that Freydis was no legitimate heir of King Logrolf, apparently claiming that her mother had birthed a child not of King Logrolf. But since neither of her parents were still around, this claim could not be proven or disproven, and it seems that when it became a case of Princess Freydis' word against Jarl Svarter's word, about half of the Jarls believed Freydis and half believed Svarter. Those who believed Svarter's claims of Freydis' legitimacy seem to have left the moot along with him and began a new, partial moot in Solitude. And so there were two moots of Jarls, both of which chose another ruler. The first moot in Windhelm, with the Jarls of Eastmarch, Dawnstar, Winterhold and the Rift, chose Freydis, and the second moot in Solitude, with the Jarls of Hafingar, Hjalmarch, Whiterun and Falkreath, chose Svarter. And you may wonder, what about the Reach and Markarth? Well, Markarth wasn't really a hold back then, and it was mostly independent and ruled by Reachmen, while parts of the territory of the Reach were under the control of the Jarl of Solitude, and would later for a time be reorganized into the hold Carthold, but that was all long after this split of East and West and done by the descendants of Svarter. So it's not really relevant, but just in case you were wondering why I didn't mention Markarth. Now, this split of East and West would last for the next few generations, with East and Western Skyrim forming two independent kingdoms. Now, we know very little from this time and from the following apparently short war, other than that both Svartalfheim and Freydis apparently for a time tried to reunite Skyrim under their own rule. But truth be told, despite people online calling this period a civil war, I can barely find any evidence of war. It could just as well have been a diplomatic conflict, although considering Skyrim's culture of gaining honor and prestige through combat and proving one's worth through combat as a ruler, it isn't strange to think that this split of East and West and this attempt at reunification came with a civil war, or at least military skirmishes. What we do know is that after the split, each side seems to have tried to destroy evidence of the other side's legitimacy, as King Svartalfheim, for example, seems to have tried to destroy the evidence of Logrolf's rule throughout Western Skyrim, and destroyed most of Freydis' possessions in Western Skyrim. So there's definitely a conflict for some time, but to what degree and how bloody it was, we have not a single idea. What we do know is that Freydis has gone into the annals of history as a legendary queen to many traditional Nords, with, according to Ulfric Stormcloak's blacksmith in the 4th era, her sword being the stuff of legend as well. And one of Skyrim's traditional crowns, the Crown of Verity, being renamed after her, becoming the crown known as the Crown of Freydis in the Eastern Holds at least. In addition to this, we know that East and West would remain separated for practically hundreds of years after their split. During most of the Second Era, Skyrim would remain split, and eventually it would even be kind of split into three, as Falkreath would end up falling under more Cyrodiilic influence and would eventually be its own little kingdom. Basically southern Skyrim, except it was called Falkreath. It was this kingdom under King Cuchulainn, so the kingdom of Falkreath, which would eventually grow to become the Septim Empire, as Cuchulainn's general, Tiber Septim, would unite all of Tamriel under his rule during the late Second Era and the Tiber Wars, and would found the Septim Empire. It was only during these conquests apparently that East and West, and also kinda South with Falkreath, would once again be united under one banner and would once again have a single king. That having been said, when you think about it, that means that Skyrim was only united by being incorporated into an empire, and was thus two independent states the last time that it was truly independent. Kinda three if you count Falkreath. And as such, I wouldn't really be surprised if Bethesda would just go the route of once more making two independent kingdoms of the province in the Elder Scrolls 6's lore, whenever that comes. After all, Skyrim has been split before, so why not just pull that card and, have a Stormcloak-controlled Skyrim and an Imperial-controlled Skyrim, but we're getting into Command War territory now, so with that, I will end the video. I sincerely hope that you learned something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today and that you found the video interesting. If so, why not give the video a like or hypes if you have access to that kind of thing. I don't know what YouTube does nowadays. And now, all that remains for me to be done is to vocally thank my top Patreon supporters. Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, King Chris 20, Volkior Vargonia, RB Dash, Polycom, Baradermas, Lexicon, Sword of Bushido, Rakai, Spaceman, Ranger, and James Lynch. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen who are my lovely Patreon supporters and YouTube members that this channel stays alive and why I can take off time in my job to even make these Elder Scrolls lore videos. So, huge thanks to them. Links are in the description if you want to join them and see your name on screen right now. With that being said, I will see all of you in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.